What is up, everyone? Hello, welcome to the Friday edition of Dangerous Ideas. It's good to hear everybody throwing into the chat where you're coming from. I see we got a couple of Scotlands, a couple of Irelands. Thanks for being here. I love that we're international. Lovely to see all of you wonderful people as we continue to fight against the twirling toilet bowl. That is our reality. The swirling, not twirling. I mean, sometimes it feels like it's twirling. But anyway, I'm going to get into, and even though we have covered the shutdown a little bit on this show, I'm going to get into the secret reason for the government shutdown that apparently no one in the government wants to actually talk about, neither Democrats nor Republicans. And I have to admit, I was not informed on this secret reason. We talked a little bit about how the Republicans want to make it about trans issues, which it's not really, and or not at all. And Democrats wanted to make it about healthcare, which it is a little bit. There is a little factor of the healthcare, your costs if you're on the Obamacare plan. The ACA are going to skyrocket up by 75% premiums immediately after this thing is passed, this budget that Trump once passed. But all of that seems to be a bit of a sideshow as to the actual reason for the government shutdown, which is pretty fascinating once you actually know what's going on. Also, I want to get into how we're seeing more collapse of the U.S. dollar. The U.S. dollar is the lowest amount of the global reserve currency that it's been since 1991. And there's a reason for that. And we're going to talk about those reasons. Also, massive ICE raids in Chicago, which were kind of ridiculous as well. And a lot Israel, new evidence that there's a bit of a wave of suicides in Israel. All of that coming up right now. Please click thumbs up, click share, click all those things that help me fight the algorithm, even though it's a losing battle that I apparently will never win. But I'm going to keep doing this. I'm going to keep doing this till it's one guy in Scotland watching this show. I'm going to keep doing this goddamn show just for those of you who actually give a shit in this world, because you're the people that matter. So thank you for being here. But let's start with this, with the secret reason for the government shutdown. This has been written in the American Prospect. It's a good outlet, and written by David Dayen. I used to know him. He does great work. And anyway, it starts off, I'm just letting you know this because I'm going to mention his name later. Starts off with an image of Russell Gov't, Office of Management and Budget Director. He was the former head of the Vice President of Heritage Foundation. He had a think tank that was very pivotal in Project 2025. And his aim, along with Donald Trump's aim, is to gut the U.S. government, essentially everything with the exception of the stormtroopers. So you gut everything from the government that might actually benefit people. And they've got a variety of ways of doing that. But we're going to get to one that I got to be honest, I didn't quite realize this had gotten to this level. And it has to do with Trump's ability to not actually use the funds that are allotted for things to actually do those things. To put it in a very, I thought it was very elegant language, the way I use the word things 3 times in one sentence. But in this article, he says the Supreme Court's latest ruling definitively allows the Trump administration to cancel whatever funding they disavow within 45 days of the end of the appropriation without any approval from Congress. The administration now has power to cut whatever they want out of the budget at a time when they are pressuring Congress to send them a budget. And we'll get a little more into this, but the reason this is pivotal is the only thing Congress actually does anymore. I mean, let's be honest. They don't do shit. The only thing they actually do is the budget. They control the purse strings, right? This is one of those pivotal things. They used to also be the body that would declare war, but we don't do that anymore. The president just bombs whoever the fuck he wants, and you move on from there. But they're supposed to control the purse strings. And so that's why a lot of the biggest fights in Congress, when they're not, renaming a post office, is over the budget, over where money will go. And obviously money is power. If you allot billions of dollars to, let's say, PBS, then PBS is going to be bigger and more powerful. If you allot $12 to PBS, then PBS will lose some of their funding and it'll be more difficult for them. And of course, this goes through the entirety of government. It goes for the EPA and the Department of Education and Housing and Urban Development, all of it. You allot tons of money there, they become bigger, more powerful, and they can actually do things. Some of those things you may agree with, some of them you may disagree with, but you get the point. However, there is a third ground. There is money allotted to them, money not allotted to them, and then there is money allotted to them that the president just doesn't give them. So, and I'm exempt, by the way, for all this conversation, I'm exempting, someone mentioned the CIA, FBI. I'm ignoring all that because all of that is funded to the gills. Like they have so much money shoved straight up their asses that they taste it in the morning. Like there's the Democrats, Republicans, no one is standing up against the CIA, the FBI, any of the dozens of quote unquote law enforcement agencies, the military, Pentagon, $1 trillion a year. None of it, fucking none of it are they debating at all. So that budget is not cut. It's not, there's no debating on it, like barely ever. It's a separate category of the things that the ruling elite use to crush us and crush other countries. That stuff, funding secured, funding not discussed. But then you've got all the other stuff, right? You've got, like I just mentioned, Department of Education, EPA, the FCC, the SEC, all these things. Go down the list. Department of Labor, Department of Commerce. How much money and manpower they have. Human power. Although I think Trump will fire all the women soon. But it depends on it dictates what their control is and what their abilities are. So the third ground is we allotted the money for these things to happen. Let's say for the post office to run or Veterans Affairs, right? To take care of our veterans. We allotted the money for that, but then Trump just decided, yeah, fuck that, I'm not giving you the money. So that third category has not really been a big fight in the U.S. government recently, or maybe ever, never to this level. Generally, if things are allotted in the budget, they are then handed out to those groups. Trump is simply just not giving the money where it's been allotted when he doesn't want to. Obviously, again, he's going to give all the money to the military, all that shit. It's amazing to have that clip. At the beginning of this term, he said he might cut the Pentagon's budget by 50%. And who knows who got in his ear to tell him he would ever do that? Because there is not a moment of thought to cutting the Pentagon budget at all from the $1 trillion a year. So anyway, the Supreme Court just ruled that Trump doesn't have to give the money to where it's allotted. However, that ruling only involved $4 billion in foreign aid funding that the administration had semi-formally tried to rescind. It does not discuss that ruling, that Supreme Court ruling, the $410 billion that the White House has simply withheld from programs across the country. That represents close to half of all outlays in fiscal year 2025 that are not defense, quote unquote, related, that are not war and law enforcement related. So half of all discretionary funding that's not war and law enforcement related is well, actually not even law enforcement. I think it's just non-defense related, but he's just not giving it to places he doesn't want to give it to. It's and as they write it in this article, it's simply vanished. Like people don't actually know where the funding went. Perhaps it has permanently vanished. Perhaps he's managed to put it in his bank account. Perhaps all the money that was supposed to go to the EPA is in Trump's bank account. Who knows? The Office of Management and Budget has offered no explanation for how the money's being spent or where it's gone. The larger point here is that the government is already, this is prior to the shutdown. This article was written like one day before the shutdown started. The government has already been shut down prior to the government shutdown, and it has been for several months. If you are talking about the things that Trump doesn't want to give money to, as the Trump administration initiated an assault on the system of government, activities deemed essential by the president, such as, and they list stalking immigrants, lobbing missiles at Iran, etc., all that stuff's gone on. All that stuff's not interrupted. But activities purported to conflict with the president's policies, regardless of whether they have been authorized by a lawmaking body of the United States, have been stopped, interrupted, only by occasional federal courts telling the president that doing so is illegal, which the Supreme Court subsequently brushes aside once it actually gets decided by the Supreme Court. In a letter delivered Monday morning and coordinated by the Federal Unionists Network, which their acronym is FUN. Come on, guys. Let's look. I support unions, but federal workers, there's nothing fun about you. There's zero fun connected to federal workers. Okay, so just drop the acronym. Seriously. The letter that was written by these federal workers agreed that the government has been functionally shut down way before the shutdown. Outlined the unprecedented harms, their letter outlined the unprecedented harms Americans are already experiencing from Trump's deadly funding cuts, including the Social Security, the Department of Veterans Affairs, and from Trump's attacks on independent science and data, agency closures without congressional input, and the decimation of labor. And, science and data, it's not just the science around, let's say, vaccines or pandemics or things like that. It's also like cancer research has been shut down. Because I don't know if it's Trump and his goons are afraid that we might solve cancer and then immigrants won't get cancer, because that'd be a serious problem. Like, what if they solve cancer? They actually find a cure, like a full golden ticket cure, golden ticket or silver bullet or whatever color you want to go with, cure for cancer, and then a trans person survives cancer. Like, what? Shit, oh no. So it's better to just let cancer keep taking people out so that you can ensure that it will also, a certain percentage that will be trans people. You see, now this I agree with. This I'm all for. Because we don't want trans people to not get cancer, and we don't want immigrants to not get cancer. So we just need cancer to just keep going, just going strong. And so any research that to help with cancer could end up helping a trans person. So we need to make sure that doesn't happen. So, I voted for Trump for that reason. Absolutely. Don't worry. Didn't actually vote for Trump. I was kidding. What? Unfortunately, they are foregrounding healthcare cuts as the main reason for the fight. Now, David Dayen, slightly different from me, he very slightly writes this from a point of view of the Democrats could be winning if they would change their argument. I don't actually. I have so little faith or belief in the Democrats or what they stand for, which is nothing, or what they are or who they are, that I couldn't care how they formulate their fight, because they are fucking sexist shit. So you do whatever you do, Democrats, which is always nothing. Anyway, he says, unfortunately, they are focusing on healthcare cuts as the main reason for the fight, and not the fact that the government has been shut down for several months and it must be reopened. Meaning, it must be reopened to a certain level that it was not operating at even before the shutdown. It needs to have guarantees that Trump and Gov't cannot, or Gov't, I guess we'll call him Gov't because vote that's just confusing, cannot meddle to shut it down again, piece by piece. This is interesting because it actually comes from a senior Republican. This comes from a Republican, Steve Womack, who said, if you're a Democrat, even just a mainstream Democrat, your predisposition might be to help negotiate with the Republicans on a funding mechanism. Why would you do that? Meaning to stop the shutdown, come up with some sort of funding, a month, 3 months, so that the government does shut down. That might be your thought, your predisposition. But he says, why would you do that if you know that whatever you negotiate is going to be subject to the knife pulled out by Rush Gov't? Meaning, just because you agree to certain funding, okay, we'll fund the government for a month, but you got to give a little bit of subsidies to Obamacare, et cetera, et cetera. Let's say that plan came through. Why does it matter if they're not giving the funding anyway? Like, if Trump's actually stopping the funding from getting to these things, then none of those negotiations matter. It's very, to me, it feels kind of similar to the negotiations with Hamas and Gaza. It's like, if Israel and the U.S. are not going to stick by anything they fucking say they're going to do, then what's to negotiate? We just negotiate a thing you're not going to do. It seems like a waste of time, which is the same with this budget discussion. Schumann put it best. He said, there is no point for Senate Democrats, or Republicans for that matter, to negotiate or vote for a spending bill, short-term or otherwise, unless it resolves or leads to the resolution of the issues of impoundments, that's what it's called when Trump stops handing out funding, and restricting further withholding of funds, reinforces GAO authority to investigate and litigate impoundments, places political shackles on Gov't, such as a new inspector general at OMB. I mean, I don't know if that matters because Trump would just put in another awful human being. So what's a new inspector general matter? But anyway, and requires regular, accurate reporting of agency spending. So basically, why negotiate on anything that doesn't make the government actually function again? Like, that seems the only thing to be negotiated on. In a shutdown, the government can dictate what parts of the executive branch stay open. Gov't has already been doing that. If it feels like the current fight isn't about health care or insurance subsidies, but about our system of government itself, that's because it is. So this is secretly what's going on in this government shutdown, and it is basically not being talked about by either side. Republicans certainly don't want to talk about it because they'd have to come forward and go, oh, yeah, well, we haven't been fucking giving the money to where it goes anyway. So why do we care? So the Republicans aren't talking about it. Democrats aren't talking about it just because they're idiots, just because they're morons, just because one little poll that they did found that Americans understand healthcare better than budget issues. But it's like, you could, first of all, there's polling that shows that Americans understand both. So you could say both. You could say, A, we don't want premiums on Obamacare to go up 75% the moment this thing passes, which is what will happen. And apparently even Republicans know that that looks bad for them. If the poorest Americans who have health care, I know millions of Americans have zero, but if the poorest Americans on Obamacare suddenly all see their premiums go up 75%, that's not going to do great for Republicans. But beyond that, Democrats could be saying, also, none of the funding has actually been going to the places. Like, Trump already has shut down the government months ago for anything that was even slightly positive for American citizens. The only things that haven't been fully or partially shut down are the things Trump likes, which is like military, police, DHS, ICE, all those things. Those are all funded to the gills. Anyway, this aspect of this shutdown is just not talked about at all. Like, absolutely hidden. And instead, you just get this bullshit back and forth of, it's about trans rights, it's about healthcare. And that's all it is. That's all the discussion is. Okay, moving on. This is just a short one, but it is pretty amazing. So I mentioned before about the crushing of freedom of speech, continued crushing of freedom of speech in the UK. And I mentioned it a little bit when it happened that there's been many protests, but several of them where the police have arrested hundreds of people for simply showing up with like posters and things saying they support Palestine Action. Palestine Action is that amazing group that has done things like sabotaged Elbit systems and, one of the big weapons contractors with Israel, etc. So Palestine Action has done a lot of impressive things, and they were recently declared a terrorist organization. So, but then beyond that, by declaring them a terrorist organization, the UK is now making it acceptable and encouraged to arrest anyone who says they support Palestine action. So hundreds of people showed up with posters, etc., that said, I support Palestine action. And then the police arrested a lot of them. So here's an article back from September 6th saying they arrested 425 at one rally for standing up and saying they support Palestine action. Just a disgusting abuse of freedom of speech. But the reason I'm bringing this now is there's a great video of this reporter who went up to the police and said he supports the genocide in Gaza. And watch what happens.
War crimes of Netanyahu, and I'm wondering if you'll arrest me. I'm supporting the war crimes of Netanyahu, and I'm wondering if you'll arrest me.
No, you've got freedom of expression, freedom of speech. That's all I've got to say.
I'm supporting a genocide, and I'm not getting arrested. She is protesting against a genocide. She is getting arrested.
So I'm against the genocide. They're going to arrest me. You've been walking around telling the police you support genocide. You support the killing of Palestinian women and children, and they're not arresting you.
I can walk completely free.
It's ridiculous.
I'm supporting the Israeli government and supporting a genocide, and I'm not getting arrested, but you're getting arrested. But you're okay for me openly to say that I support a genocide?
You've got a freedom of speech, right to say what you want.
Let me come clean. I don't actually support the Israeli government. How could you support the Israeli government considering what's happening in Gaza right now? If we care about our human rights, we must defend our right to protest against genocide.
So pretty amazing video there. It says the video is from Greenpeace UK. I don't know if that means that journalist is from Greenpeace UK. But anyway, for those of you listening to the podcast and everybody, yes, this is also a podcast. That was a journalist going around, and when he walks up to police and says he supports genocide, they don't arrest him. They don't even harass him. They're totally fine with him saying he supports genocide. But if you were at this protest saying you support Palestine action and you're against genocide, then you get arrested. I mean, I've never seen anything that looks more like Nazi Germany than that. Like, running around saying you support genocide and it's not a problem. It's not troubling. It doesn't require any action. Now, of course, what I would support is freedom of speech on both sides. So yes, someone could say they'd be a horrific human being, but they could say they support a genocide and not get arrested. However, to do it this way, where the UK is literally arresting anyone who says they're against the genocide, is totally unfathomable, unbelievable. And anyway, I just want to play the first 20 seconds of this again, because it is so wonderful.
I'm supporting the war crimes of Netanyahu, and I'm wondering if you'll arrest me.
No, you've got freedom of expression, freedom of speech. That's all I've got to say.
I'm supporting a genocide, and I'm not getting arrested. She is protesting against a genocide. She is getting arrested.
So I'm against the genocide. They're going to arrest me. You've been walking around telling the police you support genocide. You support the killing of Palestinian women and children, and they're not arresting you.
Pretty incredible. This is the world we live in. I'm telling you, this is the shit simulation. It's the worst simulation. Whoever it is that's running this simulation, whatever 16-year-old alien that's running our simulation, could you make it a little more interesting? A little more, because this is insane. Could you make it just a little more coherent? Because this one is, Jesus, how drunk are you? This simulation blows. Okay, I want to get to the continued collapse of the U.S. dollar. I don't think it's barely being talked about. Also, the crazy continued surge of Bitcoin, which is, of course, related to it. Now, those of you who know me know I'm not one of these people who thinks Bitcoin is going to change the world, but I do think it is better than the U.S. dollar. I think it's better than making it so the U.S. can just fund whatever the fuck it wants and murder whoever it wants. But anyway, here is a story that's not getting enough coverage, at least within the United States. The U.S. dollar as global reserve currency has plunged to its lowest. Oh, I think I said earlier, I said 1991. Its lowest since 1994. the dollar's status as the dominant global reserve currency just took another steep dive. The share of US dollar dominated assets held by the other central banks plunged to 56.3% of total foreign exchange reserves, the lowest since 94. And here's a chart that shows just how bad it's gotten. This chart just goes back to 2001, and you can see it is just collapsing. And just to remind everyone, there are two reasons that the U.S., and they're connected, that the U.S. can print as many dollars as we want, and it doesn't heavily devalue the dollar. It doesn't cause the dollar to become borderline meaningless. And those two reasons are the petrodollar, globally oil being sold and bought in dollars, U.S. dollars, but then, which that percentage has greatly decreased as well. But then the second one is the dollar is the global reserve currency. Now, there's kind of two reasons that the dollar is the global reserve currency. One is that it's the petrodollar. It's the oil is still the thing that supplies the most quote unquote energy around the world. The world needs energy, so as long as it's being bought and sold in dollars, you have a lot of use of the dollar, and the dollar is sought after. This means that we can print a ton of dollars, and that it doesn't much impact the worth of the dollar. The other reason is because so many other countries want to put their extra assets, their holdings, in dollars. That's the global reserve currency. If we have extra currency, we're going to put it in dollars because that's the most stable. Now, why is it the most stable? Because the U.S. government is relatively stable compared to a lot of countries. But the reason the U.S. government is stable, globally, and the amount of control the U.S. has around the world is kind of semi-stable, or has been for many years, has to do with all of these things intertwining and the massive size of the U.S. military. But the U.S. as a government, as a military, as everything, has been showing a lot less stability lately. The U.S. has come off as completely unhinged. The U.S., and we've been unhinged to a level. Like, it's not like the invasion of Iraq was hinged. There were not a lot of hinges on the invasion of Iraq. So I don't want to act like the U.S. Has suddenly become unhinged. But if you look at the way Donald Trump is doing things, no one knows what to fucking believe from him. No, like, meaning the other diplomats, the other global leaders, they don't know what he's going to do internationally, what he wants. One day he'll say that he's going to end the war in Ukraine, and then he'll say he's siding with Russia, and that Ukraine needs to sit down at the table, and Zelensky can get the fuck out of his office because he didn't wear a suit, and all these things. One day he'll say that. The following day, literally a couple of weeks later, he'll say Russia's a paper tiger and Ukraine's going to win, and they're going to win all their land back. And so the other leaders around the world, the people that make these, the power elite, have really no clue as to what the hell he's going to do. So it makes both the U.S. come across as unhinged, and the dollar seems far less stable. Well, right now, you're seeing a big example of another reason why the dollar would be less stable. The U.S. government is shut down. There's no coherence in U.S. policy, domestic or foreign, other than we want to have the biggest steroidal dudes with guns. That's basically the only thing you have to a coherent foreign and domestic policy. Like, no one really seems to know what's going on, or when the government shutdown will end, or how it will work out, or whether the American people will have any kind of stable society in 2 weeks, much less a year. And so, therefore, the currency connected to all this shitstorm, the U.S. dollar, far less stable. So all these nations around the world go, putting our reserve currencies, our reserve currency in the dollar seems like not a great idea. There's another reason that a lot of them are pulling out of putting the dollar as the global reserve currency. And that has to do with the SWIFT banking system that the U.S. and the West in general, but the U.S. controls the West, so really the U.S. controls the SWIFT banking system. The U.S. proved with Russia that it was willing to just steal Russia's assets, billions of dollars that Russia had, and cut them off from the SWIFT banking system. So they cut Russia off from SWIFT. They stole their billions of dollars that were held in other countries, and this was a giant red flag to the world. And by the way, a lot of that happened under Biden. Giant red flag to the world. We need to get the fuck out of SWIFT. We need to get out of the US dollar. And so you're seeing now that can't be done overnight, but you're seeing China, obviously Russia, India, slowly, Brazil, making efforts to get to have backups and to separate themselves from this U.S. controlled economic hegemony. So here is another aspect of this. Top BRICS countries are increasing their gold reserves, again, because they don't trust the U.S. They don't trust the U.S. dollar as reserve currency. BRICS nations have accumulated over 6,000 tons of gold by 2025, and this represents about 20 to 21% of what central banks hold globally right now. Russia leads the way with 2,335 tons, while China follows 2,298 tons, and India has 879 tons of gold. So they're decreasing their dollar supplies. They're increasing their gold supplies. And here is another aspect of BRICS's shift. BRICS, this title, BRICS dollar devaluation path strengthens with new payment systems. So this is about getting off of SWIFT, etc. BRICS dollar devaluation efforts are gaining real momentum right now as the bloc builds new financial infrastructure to reduce dependence on the U.S. currency. The strategy centers on alternative payment systems and over 6,000 tons of gold reserves that are being held by member nations. With discussions about a new currency intensifying and the de-dollarization mission advancing through tangible assets, the question of whether a BRICS currency is real has moved well beyond speculation. The approach using gold reserves acts as a shield against Western financial pressure while creating systems that simply bypass dollar networks entirely. So, and getting off of SWIFT, they've already started creating a competitor to the SWIFT banking system, the central banking system. And this is also why, and they'll never say it publicly, or almost never. Trump said it maybe once or twice, but they basically never say it. The U.S. despises BRICS. BRICS is a direct threat to the U.S. dollar, and BRICS is, of course, the countries of Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. Now, Brazil, obviously, when it was under Bolsonaro, was useless to BRICS, whereas now that it's back under Lula, it's useful, and it's a big part of BRICS. China is the driving force behind BRICS, and Trump pretends he hates these countries. Now, China is a little more complicated, but you look at like Brazil, etc., pretends he hates them for a bunch of other reasons, but this is one of the biggest ones. If the global reserve currency gets down to a low enough level, and if we stop using petroleum, fossil fuels, this is another reason that Trump hates clean energy, because the more we move off fossil fuels, the less the petrodollar will have power, the less the dollar will have power. And we, of course, have to get off of fossil fuels in order for humanity to survive. So Trump, and it's not just Trump, it's the capitalist system, it's the American system, it's both sides of the political aisle. They are at complete odds from getting off of fossil fuels. They want to make little waves, the Democrats do want to make little waves like they care about climate change, care about climate crisis. Oh, we'll have a little bit of subsidies for windmills and things like that. But it is a tiny fraction of what needs to get done. And Trump is revealing that they don't want any of that. They don't want any shift to green energy. In fact, in his speech to the UN, half of what he focused on was about how, oh, Europe needs to abandon all these clean energy efforts. Climate change is a hoax, et cetera, et cetera. And the real reason for this is not that Trump gives a shit about a windmill. Do you really think, does anyone really think he gives a fuck about the birds or about the, it doesn't look good out on the ocean? He doesn't give a shit. He doesn't give a shit about birds. He doesn't give a shit about how windmills look. He gives a shit about two things, big oil and the petrodollar. And that's why he wants to take a hatchet to every windmill. He wants to throw rocks at every solar panel because it harms any amount we get off of fossil fuels harms the dollar. And this also, at the heart of it, shows that as long as you're in this for-profit system, as long as you're in a capitalist system, the world will race to its own death. That is what we're doing. We're racing to our own death because there's profit on the other side. And so few, no mainstream media. Thank you, Don, for supporting the show. So few, even independent commentators will talk about this aspect of it. It's fucking pathetic. So, of course, all this instability with the dollar and the reserve, it dropping to the lowest since 1994, et cetera, and the shutdown of the U.S. government, all of that has made Bitcoin surging. It's hit, I think in the past day, it's hit $123,000 for one Bitcoin. It's surging to new highs. And, So some people have gone into Bitcoin like it's a cult and you have to treat it like it's a religion. And there are some people that are very much despise it because they think that a lot of activists have abandoned actual work to create change and instead focused on Bitcoin. And I am not down for either. Like, I'm not going to become an evangelist that says that it's going to change the world. I do think it's better to have Bitcoin functioning securely than to have the US dollar being the global reserve currency because Bitcoin is outside of central banking. However, as we've already seen, the richest people in the world will buy up Bitcoin. They will own the most Bitcoin. Mark my words. And they already own a lot of it. The billionaires and gazillionaires in this world will buy up anything that has money attached to it. And, Elon Musk, Tesla has a crazy amount of money in Bitcoin. You have just lunatics with tons of money in Bitcoin. So JP Morgan Chase has money in Bitcoin. Goldman Sachs has money in Bitcoin. So to pretend that it's just activists. No, it's not just activists. And it doesn't, Bitcoin at its heart does not change capitalism. Capitalism will continue to destroy this world, whether it's funded, whether the currency being used is Bitcoin or US dollars. It will keep going. There are some slight positives of Bitcoin, however. Like I said, it doesn't, whereas US dollar, if the US dollar is powerful, it funds the US military machine. Whereas if Bitcoin's powerful, it doesn't fund just the US military machine. It is, it's global. So that's one example. Another example is that a lot of people that are unbanked around the world, which are generally the poorest people in the world, are not a member of a bank. And they, in order to send money across nations, it can often cost them crazy amounts. It can be as much as 30% to send $100 to a family member somewhere where they get royally screwed. Whereas Bitcoin, you can do outside of those things. Another thing for crypto in general, but Bitcoin's the only one that really matters. But crypto in general is to be able to send money to places like Gaza, like the U.S. and British and other sanctions by countries have made it nearly impossible to actually send money to Gaza, except for via crypto. Is one of the few ways remaining. Still not easy, but anyway. So there are benefits, but people who act like it's going to make us all living a peaceful anti-capitalist world, they are confused. Okay. So let's get to the the absolutely insane ICE raid in Chicago that just took place. And I got more stories than that coming up in a moment. But I also wanted to remind you guys a new Unredacted Tonight. I think I'm going to have time to show a short clip in a minute. New Unredacted Tonight aired last night. So if you haven't seen it, go to leecamp.com/unredacted and you can watch the new episode. The main segment is about everything Israel has admitted to. And I feel like, I've mentioned obviously those things but I did my best to put them into one segment. This is everything Israel has admitted to. And the reason I think that is more useful is because that, like, if you have a family member who's like kind of on the fence about these things, and every time you say, oh, Israel uses human shields, they go, that's some blog you got that from. I put together everything Israel has admitted to, like Netanyahu, IDF soldiers, other government ministers in Israel. And you can't really argue with Israel admitting this shit about themselves. That's a far different argument than to just say, I don't read Mint Press, or I don't read Gray Zone, or whatever. So that's the new Unredacted Tonight. By the way, there's no new Unredacted a week from now. So next Thursday, there's no new episode due to scheduling conflicts, but we'll be back the week after that. Also wanted to say that, I should have mentioned this at the beginning of the show. Terrible. I'm terrible at this. Eleanor's not here today because she was on the Wednesday show. So if you want more Eleanor in your life, then check out the Wednesday live stream where we did it together. And what else do we got? I'm giving away a free month of leecamp.net, my locals page, my locals community. Free month, and you get my ebook for free. So lots of free shit just for signing up for free. Here's how you do it. You go to leecamp.net. You scroll down and become a supporter, and you use promo code LeeCampFree, one word, all caps, and that will get you a free month. You can also cancel before that month is out and pay $0. So you'd get the ebook, you'd get the month, and you'd pay $0 if that's what you want to do. If that's what you choose to do, you can do it. And so it would really be a great way to support the show. Even if you cancel, it's okay. But obviously, I'd love for you to not cancel after that month and pay the whopping $6 a month in order to support this show, because we are suppressed more than ever. YouTube has just whatever tiny number of people we're actually being shown this program. It has been cut by 80% in the past 2 weeks. So I'm hoping you guys do this, because honestly, this show was barely able to keep going before YouTube did that, and now it gets worse every day. I assume it's because YouTube and Google want to make Daddy Trump happy, and they want to make sure Trump doesn't come after them. So why not just go after anybody who's mildly left wing to begin with, and not even wait for Trump to try and come after them? I don't know, but anyway. All you got to do is go to leecamp.net, which is my locals page, scroll down and become a supporter, click that. Then when you're checking out, use coupon code LeeCampFree, all one word, all caps. That'll get you a month free. And the other thing is, I hope you'll check this show out as a podcast and give it a rating and maybe keep it on your podcast subscriptions. It's called The Lee Camp Show on Spotify. It's called Moment of Clarity on every other podcast platform. That's because Spotify banned my show, so I had to rename it. Anyway, let's keep moving here. So, is this yesterday or the day before? So 2 nights ago, ICE and federal agents repelled from Black Hawk helicopters. This is during a government shutdown. This shows you they still got their money. They're still doing fine. ICE and federal agencies repelled from Black Hawk helicopters in Chicago onto a Chicago apartment building for an ICE raid on an apartment building. Did you hear me? They repelled from fucking helicopters. Early Tuesday morning, some 300 officers from Immigration, Customs Enforcement, and other federal agencies descended on a residential building in Chicago's South Side neighborhood launching a sweeping immigration enforcement operation that supposedly targeted dangerous gang members. And when I say descended, I mean that quite literally. Many of these agents rappelled from a Black Hawk helicopter onto the rooftops of the apartment building as if they were reenacting the scenes from Call of Duty games. I was going to show you some of the video. Let me pull that up for you. They like, because here's the thing, because Trump and the right wingers have pretended that immigrants being in the country is an invasion, it's these evil gangs. They need to act like it's an invasion. So they act as if this is some sort of war that they're fighting, when in fact there's no one on the other side of the war. So here is some video. It was like hundreds of ICE personnel and other agencies. So how many did they actually catch of this criminal organization? A Border Patrol official said they were seeking, are you ready for it? How many did they catch with this Black Hawk raid? They were seeking 6 high-priority targets, including suspected members of Tren de Aragua, a Venezuelan criminal organization, probably that Trump made up. 300 ICE agents. Someone said 400. Somewhere between 300 and 400 ICE agents were out executing Mission Impossible stunts, resulting in 37 arrests, so they could get 6 gang-affiliated people. So of the 37 arrests, many of those are not, have no criminal record. So it's not just, it doesn't mean that 37 of them were horrible, criminal, illegal immigrants. It just means they arrested 37 people. They were seeking 6 gang members. Midway Blitz. They spent several days training for the raid that they called Midway Blitz. Midway Blitz was launched to remove the worst of the worst criminal illegal aliens, including murderers, rapists, gang members, pedophiles, and terrorists from Chicago communities, a DHS spokesperson said. So the DHS is generally using the same language as the Trump administration, as they've been using to justify Trump's Gestapo-like immigration crackdown, despite the glaring fact that ICE's own data has shown that approximately 72% of ICE detainees had no criminal record. 72% of ICE detainees right now have not actually committed any crime. And of the 28% that doesn't include, you've got to consider a high percentage of like traffic stop violations and had a joint in their pocket or some shit. Or talked violently, talked in a mean way to their boss at the restaurant. So of that 28%, how many of them were actual violent criminals? Probably a tiny, tiny, tiny number. This is really turning the United States into a war zone. And I mean, on domestic turf, we've obviously been at war most of our history, but that's usually in other countries. But legitimately, Trump is turning domestic America into a war zone, into a straight up military front. And, I've said even before Trump that if you were going to have $1 trillion a year military and it's going to be used to obliterate other countries, it will ultimately be used on the American people in one form or another. And of course, we also have the largest, most violent police force in the world. They kill more people than any other country. We lock up, and this is even prior to Trump, lock up more people than any other country, largest prison state in the world. But now it's more in your face. Trump is everything that was already going on, but now like high speed, now cranked up, now on Red Bull. Trump was the U.S. empire shit show, but now you just add it to, you pump it up on Red Bull, or you pump it up on some cocaine. So pretty crazy. The amount of gunpowder they used, military arms and men that they used for that raid. Okay, one more quick story, then I'm going to show a quick clip from Unredacted Tonight. Running out of time here. Israel is suffering from a suicide problem that they don't really want you to know about. Thomas Keith wrote recently, Occupation Media acknowledged the suicide of, Occupation Media means Israeli, media acknowledged the suicide of an Israeli soldier at a train station in Holon, throwing himself to death before commuters. Israeli mental health activist Noam Nov has repeatedly warned that the Zionist entity is hiding a crisis within its own ranks. Among teenagers, suicide has become the second leading cause of death, outpacing fatalities from war or military operations in many years, a statistic the occupation works hard to bury, meaning Israel works hard to bury. Nov admitted that while media coverage frames suicides as a weekly tragedy, the reality is far darker. The true scale is systematic, constant, and silenced. The soldier in Holon is not an isolated case. He is another signal of a collapsing psyche in a society at war with itself. We are, one of them said, we are mentally ill. This was done at a parliamentary committee. This is being said by IDF troops that were dumping their psychiatric medications on the parliamentary committee table in order to express to them how fucked up the soldiers are following, active tours in this genocide. So big shock. You go to Gaza, or West Bank, you commit genocide, ethnic cleansing on a daily basis, and for some odd reason, that tends to screw with your psyche. It's unclear why. It's unclear what maybe they just didn't good night's sleep. Maybe that was it. Maybe before murdering a bunch of children, they just didn't sleep well. Maybe that's why they're taking the meds. But some of the idea for speaking up, hence the parliamentary committee hearing where they were dumping their meds on the table. They said, we are mentally ill and our friends are committing suicide. That's a direct quote from one of the soldiers. So this is being completely covered up by Israel. Okay. Last thing I want to do is bring you a clip from Unredacted Tonight. You can watch this full episode over right. You can watch it right now. It's free. It's free to go there. It's free to watch. It's free to watch over there. Go watch. Wow. Why would you not do that? Why would you not? Do you think I'd have fewer viewers if I heard this voice all day long? I mean, could I possibly be doing worse than YouTube is making me do? But anyway. And in the show, this is just a clip from it. I covered everything Israel has admitted to recently. So let's see. What else has Israel admitted over the past 2 years of genocide? Well, they've admitted they use human shields, for one. Israeli soldiers have revealed the systematic use of Palestinian human shields in Gaza. In case that's not enough for you, the pro-Israel New York Times has also admitted Israel uses human shields. Of course, that's a war crime, but Israel views war crimes like Pokemon cards. They're trying to collect all of them. There's only a few that are eluding them. Israeli soldiers also admitted to stealing over $54 million from a bank in Gaza. And the IDF has boasted about stealing loads of other stuff from Gazan homes. You may look down on that, but what's the point of committing a genocide if you don't get to keep a couple tchotchkes, right? Some keepsakes, little mementos. Come on. But stealing is the least of it. Various Israeli government officials have admitted to ethnic cleansing and forced displacement. Gila Gamliel, the science and technology minister for the current Israeli Likud government, admitted, we will make the Gaza Strip uninhabitable until the population leaves, and the same thing will happen in the West Bank. Well, boy, that's pretty clear. That asshole just came right out. Just everybody else is going, We're only here for the hostages. We're only trying to kill Hamas. It's just an accident that we keep going after all the children. Meanwhile, on the news is the science and technology minister going, yeah, you see, what we're doing is we're obliterating the whole place, and then no one will want to live there anymore. That's the plan. I think it's a pretty good one, honestly. What's that? Hostages? What hostages? But Trump, too, no bullshitting there. He's made clear his plan to empty Gaza and turn it into a casino resort town with no Palestinians. Of course, again, this is the definition of ethnic cleansing. You know, I remember a time when we couldn't speak freely in this country, and yet now the president of the United States can openly speak his mind and call for genocide. That is a beautiful thing, is it not? Like that kind of freedom. You can't find that anywhere except for the swamps of Narnia. That's the only place in America. All right, folks, there is just a little piece of Unredacted tonight from last night. You can go watch it for free right now, leecamp.com/unredacted. But I also hope you'll join up at leecamp.net. Use promo code LeeCampFree, one word, to get a free month and my ebook for free. I also have a new Substack article over at realleecamp.substack.com about the flotilla. You can go check that out. And I will see you Monday. I do this live stream 3 days a week. You just need to put it on your calendar because they're not going to give you alerts. Go to, what was I going to say? Not go to, but 3 days a week, 3 p.m. Eastern. I also wanted to give an update on Rad Indie Media. I mentioned it the other day. Rad Indie Media, for those of you who don't know, is a website that Eleanor and I created to just help everybody find the important news that's out there. And it has been under attack. Massive DDoS attack, which succeeded at shutting it down. And so now we're moving it to another server, which takes some time, and it should be back up in a day or two. Sorry about that, but yeah, it is massively under attack, and that's why radindiemedia.com is not there. So when it comes back, if you've noticed it's gone and you kind of wish it were there, or hell, maybe you just found out about it and you kind of like it, it'd be awesome when it comes back up if you throw in a donation over at radindiemedia.com and support the effort over there, because it makes no money. It has no ads. There is absolutely no mechanism that Rad Indie Media can make money other than if you happen to donate. But very few people do that, because I think They just, people having a hard time. So I understand that. But all right, I'll see you Monday, and keep fighting.
Well, brother, I salute you, though, man. You're one of the few that bring together this tremendous artistic talent and still be in such deep solidarity with oppressed people.
It's an honor to be here, because I'll tell you, Lee, you have one of the funniest shows on television, bar none.
It's an enormous pleasure to be here. While I was waiting, I was leafing through your wonderful book.
The same to you. I love your show. Be happy to come back anytime.
Lee, this is one of the great honors of my long career, just to be in the same earth with you.
I'm sure.
We're just so blinded. We have so many blinders on because our society doesn't want us to know things. And so it takes shows like your show, and
it is clearly designed to eradicate.
Hey, good to see you.
Hey, Jill, how are you? Julian, thanks for joining me. Honor to have you, brother.
Consumerism is a theory that people should behave this way to help each other. It's not.
Mr. George Galloway, thank you so much for joining me in these dark times.
Always a pleasure, my friend.
Thank you so much, Lee, for having me on. Keep fighting. Ha.